Why does nobody like me?
Oh, don't worry, buddy. I'm sure we can fix it.
Really?
Well, it's not like people dislike you as a person, Monster. It's just the way that you treat them.
What do you mean?
You never let anyone in. You always just push them away.
So you're saying I need to pull people in closer?
Well, not literally.
I could do literally.
Ladies, gentlemen, and monsters of all ages, today it's time to have a chat about Elder Dragons. And not just any Elder Dragons, but a specific few that have been around for a very long time. Kushala Daora and Teostra. And I guess also Chameleos. These three were first introduced in the second generation of Monster Hunter, and outside of the third generation where they took a break, they have been in every game since, except Chameleos, which is why, even though he's technically a part of their trio of monsters, this video is not really about him so much as it is about the other two. These creatures are absolute classics within the Monster Hunter franchise and created somewhat of a standard when it comes to the idea of an Elder Dragon. Before them, we had Vitalis, who is still to this day pretty unique compared to the other Elders in many ways. We had Kirin, who was wildly unique, and then there was Lao Shan Lung, who is nothing like anything else unless you picture a Rathalos, but really old and without his wings. Alongside those three, in the second generation, we got Yamasukami, who again is just a completely unique creature all around. And then there was also Lunastra, who at the time was literally just Blue Teostra, and she didn't really count for much as a result. But what these monsters did was sort of define an expected shape for an Elder Dragon. The shape of these Elders, though, started to create a pattern. Whereas none of the other Elders looked like each other at all, these three had a similar stance. Four-legged, short neck, wings, reasonably sized tail. Chameleos again is a bit of an odd one out here, but you can easily tell that he has the same skeleton as the other two under all that, floppiness. So from here on out, I'll be more talking about Kushala and Teostra, the Steel Dragon and the Emperor of Flame. Those names actually make Kushala seem a little bit weaker than Teostra.
I'm changing your codename to Bad Boy.
The thing is, how big of a deal are these two? They are classic monsters, no doubt about it, but should they be in as many Monster Hunter games as they are? Should they be in Monster Hunter 6 whenever it comes out, or should they take a break once again? Well, my opinion is, yeah. If only from the belief that they are blocking out more inventive Elder Dragon ideas from coming into fruition, or, blocking the return of other, more forgotten Elder Dragons. I'm not saying that they are bad monsters, not by any means. They are great designs, and at least in Rise and Sunbreak, their fights are reasonably enjoyable too. I say it that specific way because before this game, Kushala Daora was widely regarded as one of the most annoying monsters in the whole series. Quite specifically, we actually did a community vote on the subject of worst monster of all time when Iceborne was the current game, and as of the Iceborne incarnation, the votes pointed to people saying that Kushala Daora was the second worst monster in the history of the series. Yeah, there are a ridiculous amount of monsters in this franchise, so that says quite a lot. Thankfully, he got quite a good remake for his fight in Rise to make it much more palatable, if not necessarily a groundbreakingly enjoyable fight. Teostra, on the other hand, has always been a pretty neat fight, good mechanics, the occasional slight changes and updates every time he shows up, but at the end of the day, he is still pretty much the same monster overall. The big question here, as far as I'm concerned, is related to other monsters more than these ones themselves. It's about the Elder Dragons that have been introduced since these monsters were made a part of the series. Things like Amatsu, the Storm Dragon, or Sadeas, the Massive Whale, Shagaru Magala, who is somewhat the same shape as these two, but with the whole 2 extra arms thing, or Valstrax, who again is similarly shaped, but notably different as well with the whole way that his wings work. Not to mention the 5th generation where things just got really crazy. This is when the shape of Kushala and Teostra really became a bit of a standard, with basically 4 full other monsters created using the same skeleton. You could argue this is a matter of making things a little bit simpler for Monster Hunter World, as the game had just had so much of its resources devoted to the creation of the environments as a whole, but it also showed us quite a bit as far as I'm concerned. We got Nergigante, we got Valhazak, we got Namiel, and we got Velkhana. Every single one of these, at least in my opinion, is far more creative and inventive than either of Kushala or Teostra, even though they're the same general shape. And so to me, this says quite a bit. Every new Elder Dragon put in the series is absolutely incredible, and not to say that Kushala and Teostra are boring, because they are cool in their own way for sure, but I just think that these others show something about the ability to come up with their incredibly interesting and unique Elder Dragons, and yet these two monsters keep taking up Elder Dragon slots. And so the question that I have now is, should we have these two in every Monster Hunter game to come like we have since the 3rd gen, or would we be better off with just a full roster of newer creatures, or even returning creatures that have gotten less attention over the years? Of course, you could argue that these two Elder Dragons are sort of necessary, being standard introductions to the concept of an Elder Dragon, having extreme power that is undoubtedly there, but also being quite accessible, easy to understand, and simple to grasp for new players. But no matter how you look at it, these are two monsters who take up two spaces within the game's roster. And while it isn't one-to-one by any means, it's much harder to make a totally new monster, of course, than it is to bring back a returning one. I have a potential scenario to offer. What if we could directly trade these two monsters returning for one whole new Elder Dragon? Instead of having the pair of them in the next Monster Hunter game, we instead got a brand new Elder Dragon of a similar difficulty level. Of course, we would never know if this was what happened. It's not like Capcom would make a vote or something like that, but in my imagination, it would be a somewhat equal trade of work required to make it all come to life. Again, it's not perfect, but I think this is more of an even sort of trade. And so how much do we really want these two? How much do we need Teostra and Kushala Daora around? Are they a required part of the Monster Hunter experience, or are they expendable to create space for newer things, or older things that people just may not remember as well? I'm not saying that one answer is correct or even better than the other, I'm merely posing the question, because as it stands, these two have had quite some staying power over the years, and I have to wonder if that is because the community actually actively wants them to be here as much as they are, or if it's just the way that things have gone, if it has just become the standard that we all accept and expect without question. In base Monster Hunter Rise, we had two Elder Dragons. Both of them were unique quests, new monsters being Wind Serpent Ibushi and also Thunder Serpent Narwa. The game felt quite different for the month that this was the case. It was the only Monster Hunter game in history, base or expansion, where the majority of the endgame seemed to be focused around non-Elder Dragon creatures completely, and non-modified creatures as well. It wasn't like Frenzied or anything like that. It was a totally unique experience, and then the first title update changed that by adding in more Elder Dragons, specifically returning Elder Dragons, two of which were Kushala and Teostra. It wasn't necessarily a bad thing, but I wonder how much different, how much more impactful that would have been if that update was just Chameleos, who had recently skipped World and Iceborne already, so he had obviously created some excitement himself, and then a brand new Elder Dragon of that general size, one that could wander around the maps as it chose to do. I think on a personal level, I would have preferred that, but what about you? What about all of you, the community as a whole? To round up my points here, Kushala and Teostra are standard Elder Dragons, but they are classics as well. They aren't overly inventive or complex as creatures, at least compared to a lot of the other ones we've gotten since, but they are executed well and their design is great nonetheless. They have been in almost every Monster Hunter game since their initial introduction, almost 15 years ago, only skipping the third generation, but every Elder Dragon that has been added since, every single one, has been more interesting and complex, at least in my own personal opinion. Every time a new Elder Dragon is introduced, it captures my attention fully, and so the question is simple. When it comes time for Monster Hunter 6, whenever that is, would you rather see these two Elder Dragons return once more, with whatever changes they would receive, or would you rather get an older returning Elder, one that hasn't been around for a few games, or even a whole new one? I mean, look at Namielle. Namielle is genuinely one of my favorite monsters of all time. On a basic level, it uses the same skeleton as these two, but the actual way that it uses it within combat is just so ridiculously different, and the way that the monster works as a whole is incredible. I'm not saying one way or another whether Teostra and Kushala should return or not, I'm just saying it's an interesting thing to think about given how consistently they have been included in the series. The possibilities of what we could have had instead, and of how much they could change even further if they'd skipped a generation like they've done once before. What do you think then? What is the right path for these monsters? Do they deserve their frequent inclusion or not? Whatever the choice, I can't wait to see what Monster Hunter 6 actually winds up as a whole. Like if you like the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.